Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Brian, and this is Badgerpod Nerdcast number 40. Do you listen to Phil Collins? I'm your host with the other Badgers who you already probably know. I'm just going to go through quickly. We got Rachel, Mike, Anna, and Allison.
Hello.
I always say hi.
Yes, hi.
Yes.
We said hi. Okay.
Say hi. Yes.
Hello. Okay. So we're going to get right into the topic, but before we do, I think...
we're not going to get right into... You lie!
No.
You're manipulating us.
But first, a word from our sponsor.
What? Okay, all right. So we have a mailbag. We have things in the bag that I shall read. Katie has made an inquiry. Also a delicious snack, by the way. Hi, Badgers. Listening to Honey Badger Radio has become the highlight of my week. Well, thank you, KD. Having you listen to us is the highlight of ours. Thank you all for your unique and eclectic perspectives. You're giving me a new way to look at issues every week. It feels inevitable that a show dedicated to stand-up comedy would happen one day. When it happens, I would love if such a show were dedicated to the late Patrice O'Neal, who, among his peers, is regarded as one of the greatest comedians of his generation. Much of his comedic genius was informed by his uncanny insight into male-female relationships and the brutal honesty that comes with it. Patrice spoke often about how much he loved women, but he also described himself, in his own words, as a misogynist because of the frustrations that men have to go through to get women, while the equation is flipped when women try to get men. A lot of comedians have given me a laugh ranging from a chuckle to a true laugh out loud. Patrice O'Neal is the only comedian who made me laugh so hard that I could not breathe. Thank you for your time, and keep up all the great work, everyone. Well, thank you for your letter, Katie, and I'll throw it out to the panel. If you guys want to talk about Patrice O'Neal? Yes, no?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
The shit.
Okay. Sounds like we're going to show on Patrice O'Neal then.
Yeah, real.
Well, yeah, possibly. We haven't done a Nerdcast on stand-up comedy, but we did a sort of main show like a year ago, didn't we?
Yeah, about feminist comedy. Yeah, but I think we really need to go into maybe some of the comedians we actually do like and some of the things that they bring up. Importance of
that we enjoy.
The importance of free speech and comedy, I think, is very important.
Doug Stanhope, by the way. If I haven't introduced anyone to Doug Stanhope yet, you're quite welcome. Go and watch the hidden treasure trove of disgusting delights that is Doug Stanhope.
Yeah.
All right.
I think a
Thank you, Mike.
show is a really good idea. I love stand-up, so. And
Me
I love
too.
the more un-PC they are, the better.
Yes.
Can we discuss it? That was his line.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any other?
No, there's more. There's more.
Yeah, let's do some more. Yeah.
I'm just I was actually stunned into silence by the sexiness of Mike's voice.
Oh, behave yourself, woman.
You're not making it easier. Okay, so BAR. I'm not going to actually say your name, but your email says Bar Scorpio, so I assume that's okay to say. I've been a long-time fan of this show. A classic case of slapstick, quaint, dad-level punnery, and cartoonish parody of the classic outdoors shows. That would be Red Green. She's talking about the Red Green show. This show was a classic of Canadian TV and PBS, becoming a flagship series throughout the 90s, and many was the guest appearance on pledge drives. The first thing that person will notice is the utter lack of female characters. Women are referred to, discussed, and bemoaned, a clear part of each character's life, but women as a rule don't appear on screen, save for a few appearances. Possum Lodge is a place of male bonding where shared tasks and recreation created a safe space for men to express themselves emotionally, even if it did mostly revolve around their feelings on the subject of duct tape. And hey, the entire series is an official Red Green channel on YouTube, in case anyone felt the need to do a little research. Do you guys want to do Red Green? Do you guys know about Red Green?
What that is?
Oh, it's.
I've never heard of it. Is it what sort of? Where does it come from? What show?
It comes from Canada.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's Canadian.
Yes,
Okay.
It's Canadian. It's a great show. Yeah, and it is a good show. You know what we should do? We should do a show on Canadian humor, and we should also include SwearNet, the Trailer Park Boys, Kids in the Hall. Saturday Night Live, and anything else, or not Saturday Night Live, what the frick? No, I'm not thinking, nah. I just threw in Americanism just to make sure that you Canadians were paying attention. I did that intentionally. Anyway, Kids in the Hall, and, oh God, what was the... You guys must know, the one with the TV channel, Second City TV. Anyway, and also Corner Gas. But if you guys listening have any other Canadian comedy you'd like us to maybe do a show on, throw that out. Badgerpod, topic at badgerpod.com. What do you guys think? Show on Canadian comedy.
I'm surprised we haven't done Trailer Park Boys yet. That's quite big with the internet people, I think.
Yeah.
What is the sorcery that you speak of, Alison?
So you don't even know what Trailer Park Boys is?
I've heard of it, but I haven't ever actually finished a show. Watching a show.
You're dead to me.
I know.
No.
Why did you mention Saturday Night Live, Allison? I thought we were talking about shows that were funny.
And Canadian, too. I just mentioned it because I was wanting to make sure you were paying attention.
Yeah, Canadian comedy is one of those things like Great British Recipes, you know.
What? Finish that thought, Mike. Finish it.
I did. The British are crap at food and the Canadians are crap at comedy. That's what I'm saying, Allison.
Oh my God! Oh, this is gonna be a fun show, friend. This is gonna be a very fun show. Shots fired.
There's fighting words, girl.
Okay, next freaking email. Yes, moving on. JF says, "Thank you for reading my last letter. Now that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: Stardust Crusaders has concluded, time is riper than ever to hop on the bandwagon as we await the next part. With such a screen-shakingly masculine conclusion, it's hard not to want to join arms and pose aggressively, kicking off the discourse in full force. If you're up to doing a podcast, I'd love to be a guest. If so, tweet me a picture of a crudely drawn penis at retracting blind." Okay, all right.
Well, I think someone knows you have to lead with your penis when you're talking about...
You gotta lead with your penis.
You're talking about JoJo, you have to lead with your penis. It is the compass...
Guys, hold on. To fill people in on this, when we were in Victoria, Brian brought his PlayStation, and he had the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fighting game, and all the characters were kind of doing this thing where they kind of led with their hips, sort of the pelvic thrust situation, but also leading when they're walking. So it was kind of like a very bizarre Ministry of Silly Walk kind of thing. It's like,
it was manly.
It was manly.
It was manly, bordering on wristy.
It was manly. That is manly.
Yes.
Okay.
You can go that far.
Yes.
And a little bit further.
Oh God.
It was a swagger or a saunter.
You can go balls
or
deep.
Swag-onter.
A
Swag-onter.
Yes, a swanter.
A swanter.
See,
Alright,
we often take the piss of the flamboyant ways that girls walk, but in a perfect world, this is how everyone would walk.
Just flamboyantly, just like, I got junk.
We're trying to outdo each other's sexiness all the time, not just submit to it. And we're gonna get there, folks.
See, now I'm imagining like Mike and Brian walking this way and just hating my imagination.
I'm gonna practice my my sachet. But I swear I'm not writing these letters. But we definitely.
You swear.
I swear I'm not writing these letters requesting JoJo, even though I'm a huge fan. But yeah, we definitely. Don't even ask. I'm totally down with that. At some point.
All right. Next letter. Shining Starlight. You should do a topic on My Little Pony and the Bronies. Considering the Bronies shrug off gender norms by enjoying a show for little girls and make their own content about it. Thank you and keep up the good work. P.S. I give Mike a big man hug. Thank you, Shining Starlight.
I accept your hug and I reapply it.
Man hugs have to also, they also have to use the compass of your peen.
I know. Is that like the reverse? If it's not touching, it's gay. Oh God, never mind.
No one can to hug. Hug how you like to hug.
Yeah.
Let's not judge the hugs. Okay.
But in all seriousness, yeah, if we wanted to do another show on ponies, I wouldn't be against that because ponies.
Yeah.
And Pinkie Pie is the best of them. Pinkie Pie is best pony.
Well, I quite like Fluttershy myself, and
Yeah, I know you like Fluttershy. Actually, you're kind of like Fluttershy, and I'm kind of like Pinkie Pie.
yeah, secretly I'm an asshole, but I am also painfully shy. So there you go.
Well, Fluttershy isn't secretly an asshole. Fluttershy has problems expressing her anger, and then she finally works through that.
Okay.
Quite a lot of us are Fluttershies.
Yes, I think so.
Well, but Pinkie Pie is the kind of person who's actually somebody who just kind of deals with depression through friendship. That's like, yeah.
Okay, they're very deep, these ponies.
Yes, they're very
They
deep.
speak for all of us. Okay, and we probably should revisit My Little Pony. We did have a really the episode that we did on My Little Pony was one of the biggest we've ever done. Like in terms of viewership, people loved it. So yeah, you guys really devoted to your ponies, and we were what we did in that episode is we talked about the whole spectrum of shaming male interests, not just when men take an interest in female things, or presumably female things, like the My Little Pony fandom, but when men take an interest in masculine things, like football, they get shamed as, child traffickers and rapists in waiting. And when men take an interest in coffee, like neutral things like coffee, they get shamed as being impotent. So, yeah. We should go revisit that.
Was that the show where you got trolled by 4chan?
I think it was the trolling by 4chan show. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
That was the first and last time we got trolled by 4chan. Well, it's been taken over by SJWs now, I suppose. It might
Yeah, so they're probably trolling us, all the time, except less wonderfully. It was a beautiful troll. Like, oh.
It wasn't bad, yeah.
It was the best troll we've had. How's that?
Yeah, well, it's 4chan. It's what they do. Well, that's what they used to do.
Yeah. Now it's all infected with cancer.
Get off my lawn.
AIDS. 4chan is infected with AIDS now. Are you guys happy?
Oh, everybody
infected with AIDS.
Uh-huh. All right. Micmac has made an inquiry. What about discussing the infamous Prometheus movie?
Oh.
If you do so, don't forget to invite Sargon of Akkad on the stream. He too hates this miserable mess of a movie. Lastly, what about discussing the anime named Watamote? Watamote? I don't know how to pronounce that. I apologize. It's basically the life of your average Tumblrette. Tomoko, the heroine, is socially awkward, hates everyone who has friends, fun, and tries to get laid, but actually dreams of having friends, fun, and getting laid. A must-see. Yeah, I've actually seen some episodes, and aside from it going really, really slowly and me being totally attention deficit disorder, so I couldn't focus enough on it, it was pretty interesting to watch how incredibly unlikable the heroine is. Like, she is just creepy and god-awful. She sort of reminds me of another character, except in Japan you can actually admit that she's unlikable and disturbing, and whereas in the U.S., if you do a character that is based on Tumblrinas, that you can't actually be honest about the fact that she's just a creep.
It's not really based on Tumblrinas as far as I know, but in fact there was a great love of her on 4chan, as a waifu.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
I could be wrong if it's the character I'm thinking
Probably
of.
Is. Yeah, and that's part of the problem, right? I think she was written to be totally detestable, but then men still are okay with that. Well, maybe women are too. I don't know.
And
anyway,
yeah, Prometheus is fucking ridiculous. Sargon, get your ass in here, and we'll talk about how shit that film is, or I'll come out there and talk to you about how shit that film is when you're done, having 3-hour conversations with important academics and what have you.
Yeah.
Let's get wrecked to talk about Prometheus.
Yay!
Right, priorities, Sargon, priorities. We gotta talk about Prometheus and how bad it is.
Well, everything starts with a story. That's how you change the world. JFeather980. I think NBC's Once Upon a Time would be an interesting show topic. I think the show does a good job of looking at familiar tropes differently. It would be cool to hear the Badger's perspective, not just on the way the story deals with the gender dynamics of its characters, but also how it ties Disney's world into its own.
I have a love-hate relationship with this show.
What show?
Once Upon a Time. Okay, here's.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let me break this down because I ended up watching, I think, the first couple seasons, and I tried to stay with the show, but it really kind of jumped the shark around Neverland for me, and it went in a way that it was just it's a clusterfuck, to be perfectly honest. It really is. I don't. It's just one. It's very soap opera-ish, and it had so many opportunities to go really dark, and it didn't, and I got pissed. So, sorry, I'm just ignore me.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's not dark enough for you. Okay, should we get
dark enough for me? But the female interactions are definitely worth commenting on. But,
yeah, well, let's get into the show. I mean, I think next week we're probably going to be doing Red versus Blue.
Red versus Blue.
Yeah, so for next week we got it sort of set. But I think the week after it, do you guys want to go for Prometheus, or do you want to...
I think we should do the stand-up comedy stuff, because if we've done film and television and animation already, I think that moving into stand-up comedy would be like to throw it into the rotation. So we could certainly look at that, like the politically incorrect stand-up comedians, or maybe what was it, Red Green or whatever it is?
And the Canadian... Okay, so something comedy related.
Yeah, something comedy related.
All right, let's get into this.
Okay, so
Mike?
let's talk about Phil Collins. I'm going to give it to Mike.
Okay, so...
We're doing this now.
This is related to the main topic, but...
Oh God, Mike, you're making it so we won't be able to... Oh.
Do you like Phil Collins? I've been a big fan of amorphous mediocrity ever since those bygone halcyon days before Phil Collins was complaining on behalf of the poor, shortly before he got rich and started complaining on behalf of the rich. Too solid, they said, too rocky. It was in the 80s when it became clear that this man is not a rock, he is a wave. It's an epic meditation on intangibility. At the same time, it takes music from at least occasionally wavering on the slow or fast lanes to searing directly down the middle of the road like a seismic bandsaw. Alison, take off your robe. Listen to the brilliant ensemble of one cheesy riff and two drums. He's heralded as one of the best drummers ever. All his songs have a dull as dishwater 4/4 slog of a drum part. You can practically hear the nuance slowly leaking forever out of the freshly drilled hole of every instrument. Rachel, remove your dress. Every attempt to express what's good about Phil Collins results in failure, in naught but interchangeable and subjective woo. The sheer songwriting. The new peak of professionalism. Brian, would you please unsheath the otter? Take the lyrics to any of his songs, or the anythings of any of his songs. What is it that stands out about it? The voice? No. The melody? No. The beat? Hell no. When you add it up, there is simply nothing there. Music is about filling empty space. There needs to be something invasive about it, something offensive. But in the Phil Collins recipe, when you add all the stalemates together, it becomes so inoffensive, so industrially bland, that it is damaging to any healthy person's existential sanity. I'm not saying you should feel guilty for liking it, but Phil Collins is what psychopaths think empathy sounds like. Alison, get on your knees so the otter can see your asshole. Phil Collins' ability to complain about abusive political authority with an Oscar in his hand is at least satisfying in a commercial way to people with narrow aims. It's no surprise that when musicians get mediocre, that's when they start following the trendiest PR causes to try to keep themselves afloat. When the lifeboat of music that once kept you alive becomes a luxury yacht that now keeps you dead inside, that's going to change your game somewhat, and you'll do well to make it out as the same person. But the Phil Collinses of the world, and the Bonos of the world, and the Morrisseys of the world, and the Chris Martins of the world cannot be corrupted by this shift into sycophantic mediocrity, because they have always been there, dangling a mealworm into the salmon stream while bears grab the fish with their teeth. And now they have what they always wanted, a luxury yacht that runs on mealworm. Anna, don't just stare at it, get the bazooka. But no one should feel guilty for liking the music they like. The music that is appropriate for them. There is music for every occasion, and that's why it all exists. They make music for children. They make music for old people. And they make music for severely, emotionally stunted people whose grip on reality is slowly disintegrating before their very eyes and ears. This is Susunio, a great, great song, a personal favorite.
Wow.
Is that the end?
I just
That was
want to leave a
fucking
little bit of
amazing.
room, you know,
That
because
was-
you
that was
never
beautiful.
know.
That's
How was that?
It was good. It was
that
good.
was
I'm
that
just, you know,
that was amazing.
now we need to smoke a cigarette. Right?
Yeah, I think so. Or something else.
Something happened.
That'll help.
All right.
Well,
Brian,
now we
take
did.
All right. Did that? Was that too loud or too quiet or anything?
Oh, it was good.
Perfect.
It
Awesome.
That was perfect.
was perfect. It was ideal.
I may need that recording for science.
For science, yeah, right.
Shut up.
Ugh.
For science. Anyway. Yeah, Phil Collins is fucking perfect.
Oh my god! And also the American Psycho references. I hear a distinct lack of Brian. Is he disappeared into the back?
Well, he's released the otter, so I mean,
There you go.
like, you know.
I'm glad I got to be included in the narrative.
And if you've
I
only
was just gonna
as a
say-
handler of otters.
I was just gonna say, never trust a drummer that sings. And also, I was
I'm
gonna.
trying to think of one. You've got a good point, actually. Don Henley from the Eagles, he was like, that was the weird thing about the Eagles. They had like 7 guitarists on stage, and the drummer was the singer.
Well, I mean, you can get you can earn their trust, but you have to let them prove themselves, like Dave Grohl, or
Dave Grohl, thank you. Yes, there you go.
yeah, and Michael Fogarty of CCR. I believe he's a drummer as well. But yeah, Phil Collins. I didn't know people thought he was the best. Did they really think that?
Well, occasionally you meet people who just pick this up because they want to, someone to answer the question, who's the best? Hey, who's the best ever? What's your dream band? And they just pick Phil Collins because they don't know any of the fucking drummers, who happen to also be stars in their own right or whatever.
Like Dave Grohl.
Yeah, there's people in Britain who just worship John Lennon for no fucking reason other than they want an answer as to who to worship.
Right. Yeah, well, that's true.
And some of that shit even bleeds out into Phil Collins, even though he's unworthy of any of that. Anyway, let's talk about American Psycho. I don't want to talk about Phil Collins.
Okay.
I think everything that can be said about Phil Collins, you have said, and gave in and said way too much. But I think
With great force.
Anna,
I
can you talk? Because if you want to say something, please do. No sound.
Yeah, we're not
Oh,
hearing it.
that's very postmodern, Anna.
Yeah. But I have
That was the Rothko of comments.
I have my write-up, so...
It's subtle, you have to listen to the gradations of the silence to get the true meaning.
It's truly transcendent.
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. American Psycho is, if nothing else, a character study. But at its core, beneath the violence and commentaries on the evils of capitalism, it is a story about feeling alienated. The movie, based on Bret Easton Ellis's novel of the same name, follows an investment banker by the name of Patrick Bateman. Patrick Bateman is a 28-year-old yuppie or young professional, trapped in the never-ending void of shallow social interactions and rampant consumerism in the 1980s. He lives in a world where almost everyone looks the same, acts about the same, and easily slips into a crowd of seemingly identical business suits with slick-backed haircuts. Patrick Bateman is conflicted by the simultaneous desire to both fit in and to kill anyone who annoys him. As he tumbles further and further into madness, we are left questioning whether our protagonist is a reliable narrator. The audience cannot be sure how much is real and how much is in his psychotic imagination. Written into the character of Patrick Bateman is the nightmare of every human being on the planet. He is attractive, and at times comes off as the more considerate member in his group of friends, and yet it is all a carefully constructed hollow shell that he has created to fit in and blend in with society. He is the perfect killer, because even if what we are seeing is more than a hallucination, no one would suspect him. He looks and acts too much like all his shallow acquaintances to be identified. Within him is only greed and disgust, and the only things he seems to take joy in are music, conformity, personal achievement, and his murderous fantasies. He is the manifestation of the extreme end of capitalism, where everyone and everything is seen as a commodity. But what makes this violent murderer sympathetic is that feeling of loneliness and alienation, the feeling of being fundamentally different from people around you, and in some way a monster. We, the viewer, are challenged to ask ourselves if we could be this man. We ask if this man's madness has always been there, or if it has been caused by a culture of shallow, materialistic, and self-centered yuppies, a group of individuals which Bateman both hates and desires acceptance from. As his fantasies become increasingly unhinged and his disgust for the people around him deepens, we are left with a harsh reality. With the exception of the homeless man and his dog, the only potentially decent people in this story are the detective and Bateman's secretary Jean, who are both alive at the end of the story. Everyone he knows is a terrible person, on a myriad of drugs to deal with the fact that they are surrounded by terrible people, with few exceptions. Everyone he knows is selfish, inconsiderate, materialistic, and boring. But most troubling of all is the fact that if Bateman is a reliable narrator, and the murders are real, no one believes his confession, a fact which ultimately traps him in this never-ending sea of mindless, shallow narcissists for all time, a monster in the cage of his own choosing. And
all right. Thank you for that well-written piece, Rachel. So I want to give the listeners a little bit of background. We watched this together while we were in Victoria because we knew we were going to do a show on it. So we all kind of like have that shared experience, and we were talking about the movie off and on as it was playing out. And I love American Psycho. I think one of the things that I really like about it is that it is I think it's intentionally vague. I mean, it's clearly intentionally vague in terms of like what is what he's experiencing real or is it imagined? What kind of person is he? Is he the crazy one and everyone else is sane, or is it the other way around, or is it whatever? And as a result of that, I think that there's a lot that you can talk about. I'm going to throw in a couple of trivia things, and then I'll open the floor up to the rest of you guys if you want to say anything. When the director of the film, she actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but all the scenes where Patrick Bateman is like bathing and he's showering and he's naked and stuff, she actually brought a bunch of female people that were working on the film to all come out and watch Christian Bale shower in those scenes and do his exercise routine and stuff. Of course, he didn't mind. The bit where he kills Jared Leto with the axe after introducing him to Huey Lewis in the News, there's a bit where he dances across the floor and also with the axe. That was all improv, and the director thought it was so hilarious that she decided to leave it in. And the third bit of trivia that you might find interesting was that in all the scenes with Willem Dafoe, who is the detective that's investigating the disappearance, they actually shot it 3 times, and they had Willem Dafoe do 3 different performances. One where he knew that Bateman was the killer, one where he did not know or didn't think he was the killer, and one where he was unsure whether or not he was the killer. And then after they shot all 3, they spliced it and randomly put it together so that a viewer would not really know where he stood on that. That's why there are times where Willem Dafoe is very suspicious and times where he's completely oblivious or like totally against it. And I think that's pretty interesting. So And that's it. So I'll leave it to Rachel, if you want to say something.
Well, the thing I wanted to bring up is I actually did a little bit of research into this, and the author said that when they were writing this, that the place that this story actually came from was not from somebody who intended to write a story or about culture or about capitalism. It came from a position, a point in his life where he found himself feeling increasingly alienated and isolated overall, and feeling like, sorry, I'm getting distracted by Anna. We see a random Anna. Okay, but basically what ended up happening was he said that he found himself in that lonely place, and he kept trying to fill the hole with things like with consumerism, with buying things and doing the things that were supposed to make him feel like a better person, like he was becoming better, but instead it just made him feel increasingly terrible, worse and worse. And I just thought that would be something to add to the conversation.
Anna, you're back, and I think we can hear you now. Do you want to say a few things? Anything? Yes, we got audio.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, I think my phone likes me better than my computer at this point. But yeah, I did want to say lots of things if you want to release the floodgates.
Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. All right. Well, the earlier point that I jumped in on when I thought I could talk was about the waifus of the Winry / Sakura / I don't know if you guys watch Shaman King, but Anna is the character there. And it's not even tsundere, it's beyond that. It's complete bitchiness, micromanaging, constantly not giving approval, and or like Asuka from Evangelion. That type seems to be a waifu archetype that I particularly can't stand, that has absolutely no redeeming qualities. It's basically Cameron from *Halt and Catch Fire* in a lot of ways, and they have this idea that, oh, well, she's just trying to train these guys into shape, but most of the time it's just a worthless woman who doesn't do anything. She doesn't actually accomplish anything herself. She just bosses everybody around, and still somehow she's an object of affection. And I frequently find that, not in just anime, that's kind of rare in anime, but it definitely happens as a very obvious archetype, but it's not a common thing as it is in a lot of Western media over the past 20 years or so, where girls like me grew up on it, and you basically have an idea of a horrible, evil bitch that guys like because she's a bitch, and they want to get her attention because she's a bitch, and I find that so damaging and so incredibly disruptive to human relations, and specifically to women growing up learning that that is somehow going to be rewarded, and that's what men look for. I just find it particularly sick. So I heard you guys were mentioning something about that type, and I definitely wanted to speak on that. The next thing that kind of leads into it was Susudio. I'm not sure if Mike was being sarcastic or tongue-in-cheek about it being his favorite song, because it's my favorite song in that way too. It's a anthem of gynocentrism and obsession over a woman that will never give you a time of day, and the whole song is about worshiping her, and is just particularly sick. So on that regard, I definitely have issues with Phil Collins. But kind of interesting point you also brought up about wanting to find someone who's like the best, and like, who do you like? Oh, Phil Collins. There was definitely a thing about Feeling in the Air Tonight, the drum solo. People got obsessed with it, and it's a fantastic drum solo bit. Like, it works in the song, and I think it's great, but it's not end all and be all of drum solos. And it definitely became a meme of liking that as a pretentious, like, people like Tarantino movies or something else where they just kind of stick to something they like to say that they like it as like a entry into a club of some sort. And so I think that's definitely came from there, that people are really into Phil Collins because of that one single bit in that one single song. And the last thing I wanted to say was, I'm not sure what actually, so something about American Psycho, but I'll let you guys talk ahead. And, yeah.
I'm really glad to have you here, and I'm glad that you were able to make the comments to let you catch up to where we were. But basically, we were just, we had just done the reading of American Psycho, and now we're just talking about the film and basically what the author's intentions were, and some stuff about the director and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, on that, I definitely find it awesome what they did with the American Psycho I mean, regardless if it's real or not, if he's actually committing those crimes or not, it's very much a metaphor or a larger look at Reaganomics and society of the 80s, and like the East Coast, Wall Street kind of, vulture, wolf mentality, and how empty inside they are. With the more glitz and glamour you put on the outside, the more frequently that is at the expense of any real, actual humanity and real connection. And the more you focus on a form, the more you lose the function. And it was very much, I think, a metaphor or a way of showing that certain ideals that we chose to look at as success are, in fact, as far removed from humans as robots are. They basically were machines serving a monetary system instead of having any real connections. And in fact, it showed how almost directly money kills people. So I found that really awesome. Well, not money, but excess of greed and caring only about that bottom line and the executive mentality, how it literally kills people. So I found that really cool. And that's it.
All right. If no one else is going to say anything, I'm going to talk a little bit.
Okay, Brian. I'll have more to say later, but yeah, go on, Brian.
No, you can if you want to. Go ahead. It was just.
The reason I wanted to mention the writer's perspective is because I think people sometimes get so caught up in the fact that it is about somebody who murders people or supposedly murders people that they forget what makes the character so interesting is the fact that the thing that makes us empathize with him is that we also know that exact same feeling, the feeling that you are alone in a crowded place and that maybe you're surrounded by people who disgust you. And for whatever reason, you're conflicted and at the same time you want to fit in with them because it's the thing to do. I think everybody at some point in their life has done that thing. Even though they're disgusted with some people, they want to fit in with them because they crave that kind of acceptance. And this is Patrick Bateman in a nutshell. He spends all of his time being disgusted by all of these people and being concerned with his own personal achievements. A lot of times that he seems to get frustrated and upset and angry is the time when he realizes he's being outdone by someone, most likely. It's usually Paul Allen. But it's people in some way are outdoing him and he's unable to get ahead, or somebody says something about him. Like, for example, I think there's a moment where I think it's towards the end maybe, and he's talking to the lawyer, and he says something about he's trying to talk about the confession, and somebody says like, oh no, Bateman is too much of a pussy basically to have ever killed anybody or ever done any of those things. Like, he simply would never do anything like that. And so he's of course very frustrated. Or was it Paul Allen? But basically, there are people who are saying like demeaning things about Patrick Bateman to his face because they don't even remember the difference between him and some other person. And that's an ongoing thing, is that they're just these drones that all seem to look alike, and he's in his personal hell. And there's even a moment where he's talking to his girlfriend, and she says, why don't you quit this job? You hate it. And he says, I want to fit in. He stays with the job. He doesn't have to because his father practically owns the company. But he stays with it because it means a feeling of being somewhat like everybody else. And there's comfort in that feeling, and yet it's still not enough for him. He doesn't really feel comfort in it. He knows he's supposed to feel comfort in that conformity, in slipping in with everybody else who looks exactly like him and does the exact same things and hangs out with all the exact same people. But it just doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling right now.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that's one of the things that I find interesting about this film in particular, and films like this, is that you can watch it, and I want to propose like a kind of a big question to you guys. I've seen like movie critics that have interviewed filmmakers, and this was one specific guy. I believe his name is Mark Kermode, and he basically was talking to Willem Dafoe about a film that Willem Dafoe had made, another film, and he asked him, and I know that he asked Willem Dafoe if he felt that he made a feminist film. Whatever the film was, it doesn't really matter. Willem Dafoe said, no, that wasn't my intention. Mark Kermode, I hope I'm not butchering his name. He's a British guy. He does film reviews. He said,
if you like angry rants, Mark Kermode is your man. He's known as the doctor of it sometimes.
Yeah. He said it doesn't matter that Willem Dafoe didn't think that he made that kind of film because he only made the film, but I watched the film, and to me, this is what this film is about. So my question is, it's kind of a big one, but I wonder about this because American Psycho falls into this category. Can you look at the intention of a writer, director, team, whatever, when they make a film, and you look at it through the framework of what they intended when they made it, or is it something like what it's intended to be, dependent more on what you see when you watch it? So if you watch a film and to you it's a film about something, like in the case of, well, the TV show that shall not be named, do you see it as what you see, or do you see it as how the writers intended it, or the directors? So, like, I say that because American Psycho could be, because the woman who is the director, she is friends with Gloria Steinem, so, and Gloria Steinem was actually kind of like made recommendations, like originally, Patrick Bateman was going to be played by Leonardo DiCaprio, but Gloria Steinem stepped in and said he shouldn't be because he had too many young teenage girls that were fans, and they didn't want him portrayed as a psychopath in a movie, because I think it was like Hot on the Heels of Titanic or something, or Romeo and Juliet, or something along those lines. So she basically pushed for someone else, and then they replaced him with Christian Bale. So as a result of that, it's clear that Gloria Steinem had influence over this film. And for those of you who don't know, Gloria Steinem is a prominent feminist from the 60s. So, but does that mean that, and the director also made, like, not only was she making comments that usually toe the feminist line, like, for example, Patrick Bateman and his friends, they talked poorly about women in a couple of scenes, and of course he kills a lot of women, and there's commentary about greed and Wall Street, rich, white, evil guy stuff. But is there also something deeper that you can look at that's a little bit less obvious? It's a little bit less sort of, and may have been intended or not. I don't really know. So this is kind of a big question. I don't mean for it to be really confusing, but do you guys follow what I'm saying? Because I think this could be something.
Yeah, until I watched the film with you guys, it hadn't occurred to me that the whole thing, all the murders, everything was a hallucination. Because the one thing in the whole movie that is obviously a hallucination is when he's at the ATM and it says, "Feed me a stray cat," and that's when he starts going, "It was cat." You just like kittens, Alison.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, there is that moment.
And when he's talking to his lawyer at the end, and he says, "But I spoke to Paul Tate in London 10 days ago," that could be explained by the fact that wasn't Paul Tate. That was just some guy who looks like him. Yeah.
Well, Alan, yeah.
Because they all look alike.
Alan, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like that interpretation better, that it was just all a hallucination by someone
But yeah, like once I'd spoken to you guys about it, I actually started to try and unravel everything, and yeah, it does look remarkably like, well, not unlike the show that shall not be named. That the whole thing is expressed to be real, but the gorilla keeps walking across the screen.
Well, the thing is, what gets me is that if that's right, and this is actually a guy who's suffering from depression and some form of psychosis, that whole scene with the homeless guy when he says, "You're not like me at all," the two characters are very, very close in how they're treated in society. In fact, a lot of men end up on the streets because they have mental illness, and because they just fall through the cracks because no one cares. All they care is the fact that they perform their function as a cog in the machine, and when they have needs, when they have a problem like depression or psychotic episodes where they have completely lost touch with reality. When they have a problem, they're just ignored, and they end up, like I said, falling through the cracks. And so maybe in that scene, he's actually setting up that break when he kills the homeless guy, or supposedly, maybe he hallucinates it. He may be becoming that person who's falling through the cracks, and it's like that's emphasized by the fact that nobody, like in the show, at multiple points in time, they don't even know who he is. They can't even remember his name. They don't even know him well enough to know his name, and in all the only way that he has any presence or worth in this society is just to fit into it and do whatever's expected of him. And the instant he stops, he just falls away and is nothing, like the homeless guy. And I thought that was really poignant. That's actually, to me, that's a much more impactful message than something that's just about the greed of this like a capitalist economic system or yuppies or whatever. That seems sort of really pat and trite. Whereas if you interpret it as a hallucination and this slow and almost agonizing descent into utter madness by this poor fuck, it becomes much more of an interesting statement about society. Of course, it's also a statement about how we treat men, which somehow I doubt the friend of Gloria Steinem was really going for, but maybe not. I don't know.
It might be an unintended thing, because if she was following the book, there are things that are, of course, there that are being suggested, whether or not she realizes it. And when the author, like I said, this was the person's mentality, and it is a deeper statement if it was all just a hallucination, because if you think about it, think about every single woman in this movie, like from beginning to end, with the exception of the secretary. Every single woman is with him just for the reason to get what they want. Like, there's the girl that he's having an affair with, and she's just there because she wants somebody. She wants some kind of attachment to somebody, because her boyfriend obviously isn't giving her attention, because their relationship is basically a sham because he's gay. And she at one point says, "I just want a child. I just want 2 beautiful children." So she's constantly on drugs to deal with the fact that she is entirely unhappy, and everything that they do is for appearances. His fiancée is constantly talking about the huge ceremony that she wants to have, and hiring Annie Leibovitz and all of these different things, and oh my gosh, it'll be magical. She seems more interested in the showmanship, the appearance of something amazing, than the actual relationship. And all the women that he has, they're there because money, or because they find him attractive, or because he's rich. It's never because they want to really know who he actually is. And the same thing with all of his friends. All of his friends are there for those exact same reasons. Not a single one of them has anything interesting to say. They just talk about nothing. They talk and talk, but say nothing at all.
Well, that was actually something I was going to bring up, is his friends or his coworkers or whatever. And by the way, I find it really interesting that the company he works for, we don't know what they do. Everyone's a vice president, and they actually spend all their time like booking seats at making reservations at various high-end restaurants. But they don't really do any work, And I don't know if that's just another caricature. It's like the whole corporate thing is made into a satirical caricature. And these guys and their wives, girlfriends, fiancés, whatever, they all sit around in tables and they talk about like world politics, but they don't even sound like they really believe in what they're saying. It's like they're just towing the line, like they're all just saying stuff that you're supposed to say, like all the things that you're supposed to, that you're expected to believe in, and they're just declaring them in front of other people so that they can say, oh, this is a good man because he believes that they need to do stuff in Sri Lanka, or help out stop world hunger and all those kinds of things, which are relatively obvious, things to pursue.
Well, I'm not sure if you're done. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to mention that nowadays it might be overdone, but for the time, that was a groundbreaking movie. That was the only movie talking about and in any way criticizing the culture, and also to point out it is a caricature, but not really, because I actually know people who've worked in a variety of corporate structures, and they have meetings about meetings, and that's what they do all day. There's very little work to be done. In fact, at some points, people are literally forbidden from doing work when certain mergers or acquisitions are happening. And if you watch Dilbert or Office Space or anything like that, a variety of people who have worked in the corporate structure will tell you that it is absolutely that freaking ridiculous. So that's just all I'm saying.
Just a reminder, this came out in like 2000, so it's not really. There have been other movies that have criticized this sort of culture before, but it's.
Fight Club and that American Psycho were pretty much.
It's transgressive fiction, basically. It's that sort of it's the sort of idea that you're criticizing the culture through a dark storyline where somebody goes through a psychotic break. Yeah.
Well, that's actually one of the things that makes this movie so awesome, is that you can look at it from all these different ways, and I don't think any of them are wrong. And I think that's totally cool, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think that in the 80s, which is the time period in which American Psycho takes place, there was a lot of that going on. So it does. I think to Anna's point, she's not wrong, you know. So, but then like when you look back on the way the film interprets it, it may have, that may have been true, but it just seems so beyond the pale. But then there's like the other thing that I think that's what I think is really interesting. This is what I wanted to say. Did you guys notice that there really isn't that much difference between the homeless man and Patrick Bateman, because they're both invisible. But they're invisible in different ways, at least the way the film does it. The homeless guy is invisible because he's a homeless man. Nobody cares. He has no status. He lives in an alley. He smells like shit. All these things. And he has absolutely no power. Patrick Bateman has an exceptional amount of power, but in so doing, he has to lose his identity by blending in with a bunch of other people who do not value each other, don't see each other as anything more than things to compete with, or somehow, he sort of blends into the hive, so you almost become part of the drudgery that no one cares about, or in struggling to fit in, you actually end up blending in somewhere else where people of that same level also don't care about. So there is something that it says about that endless pursuit of power, and if you fail, what happens to you?
Well, that's an amazing point, Brian, because you actually point out the fact that his power, therefore, is entirely illusory. If he's invisible and there is not much difference between him and the homeless man, then does he really have power?
Well, it's like this. If he's part of the machine and his only power is to push a button that is very crucial to the running of the machine, but if he doesn't do it, he gets removed and replaced. And if he does it poorly, he gets removed and replaced. I mean, regardless of how much power effect it has on the machine, he doesn't really have any power himself.
He's basically just as disposable as the homeless guy is.
Yeah.
Well, ask yourself this question: Does his actions seem like the actions, or at least in his hallucinations, do the actions that he takes, are they the actions of somebody who is actually in control, or somebody who wants some kind of illusion of control, or who wants some kind of control in a world where he has no control at all? Because he seems to have the behavior of somebody who really is actually powerless overall. I mean, he is somebody who. What is his only power? What is really his power? What is the only thing that he really does, which is the killing? If he's a reliable narrator and he's actually killing people, this is his only power. This is the only thing that sets him apart from everybody else. This is the only thing that he has power over, that he can actually do. This is his only real action that he can take and still remain part of the group.
Well, I think the point, even if whether it's all a hallucination or whether it's all real, it's sort of a comment on this is what a psycho would be like if they were to grow up in that sort of Wall Street thing. It wouldn't actually make a difference. No one would notice that he's a psycho. No one would even notice that he's killing people. And indeed, no one would even notice if he's going insane. So even if you become a raving, violent, murderous psychopath, even that won't satisfy you in this particular environment.
Yeah.
You're even more trapped than a psychologically damaged person.
Here's something else to think about, too. I was just thinking about the music choices. So, Patrick Bateman specifically chooses top 40, very sort of mainstream, middle-of-the-road, dull hits. And he actually criticizes the bands when he does his little... These are like the things that he's most passionate about discussing. If you watch the film, that's when he really gets involved with, internally with what he's talking about, is when he's talking about the music choices. But his music choices, first off, when he talks about the bands, like when he talks about Phil Collins, he discusses his work with Genesis, and he says, oh, it was too, artsy for me. And that was probably the better work. Like Genesis was better before, like Phil Collins was better with them than when he went off on his own. Because they took more risks and they did more stuff, and I guess he just wanted to make money. I don't really know. And same thing with Huey Lewis. He says, they were too new wave in the beginning, but now they're fitting right in, And I also look at the songs, the individual song choices he makes. In the first song is Hip to Be Square, which is basically all about conformity, right? It's all about fitting in, which is something that he values a great deal. He wants to blend in, but also be exceptional, which seems like a bit of a contradiction. And then when he talks about Susudio, which I didn't really pay attention to the lyrics until Anna pointed it out, he plays that song when he's fucking two prostitutes. So, I mean, is there a connection there? I think that does say something. And then Whitney Houston, which he plays at the end, it's The Greatest Love of All, which I believe is Love for Yourself. And it's almost like these are things that he's chasing. These are things that he wants. And I think that that's also really interesting because those are the things that he's appears to be most passionate about. No?
Yeah, I would agree. I would absolutely agree because if you think about it, when he's talking about towards the end about Whitney Houston, he said like the greatest love of all. It's like if no one else can love you, you can still love yourself, and it's beautifully expressed. I'm sorry. It's about. I mean, he's basically a narcissist because nobody else will love him. He's like, well, if no one else can love you, you can at least love yourself.
If no one else loves you and the only thing you have left is to love yourself, does that really make you a narcissist? Is that something that starts when people abandon you, or is that something that happens
I don't know.
on your own and then people abandon you because they can't stand to be around you?
All right, question about narcissism. Isn't narcissism about forcing other people to be in adoration of you as opposed to actually having some sort of self-respect and ability to love yourself?
Well, yeah, it's false self-respect. You don't really actually love yourself.
No, and that's why narcissists keep imploding, because ultimately underneath their desire for adoration, there's that self-loathing that causes them to attract all the things that ends up destroying what they created.
Yeah,
anyway.
and if Patrick Bateman really loved himself, he wouldn't be so wounded by somebody saying some shit about him or having a better business card or something like that.
Oh my God.
If he really gave a shit about himself, if he really had all of these wonderful feelings about himself really deep down, would he really give a shit?
But Rachel,
Real gangsta-ass niggas don't flex nuts, because real gangsta-ass niggas don't need to.
but Rachel, the tasteful thickness of it.
And the raised lettering.
It's even got a watermark.
Yeah.
That's bone.
It's bone, and this is in this font is called something like.
That's called bone.
It's Cillian
Rail.
Rail. Yeah, Cillian Rail. And then there's.
You know what, guys?
Actually, that's probably one of my favorite scenes because graphic design.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna call it. I think
let's wrap it up then.
Yeah,
Fine.
let's wrap that.
Well, always use
some
protection.
newspaper.
Always use protection. Yeah. I mean, do you get a chow in here?
So, guys that are listening to this chat, have you guys considered all the stuff that we were talking about when we watched American Psycho? And if If you have, then awesome. Please leave a comment. Give us some perspective. Maybe you saw something else. I think that it's a really great movie that is open to interpretation on a multitude of levels, and some of them can be a lot less obvious than others, and all of them have value. So just tell us what you think. And before I wrap it up, is there any final thoughts that any of my beautiful panelists have?
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Do you like Honey Badger Radio? A show so interesting. Most people don't listening to what's actually being said, but they should, because it's not just about men's rights and human. Never mind. I fucked this up.
All right. Okay. Well, you know, there can't be one of our shows without the requisite amount of total awkwardness and nerd flailing. Yeah. So considering supporting us as a patron if you like our content. It's www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio, and I think I'll leave it at that. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Mike, is that a raincoat you're wearing?
You're just wanting to murder us.
Hey, Paul.
And what was so great about Dorsia anyway? God damn it.
It was great because it was hard to get in.
Yeah, well...
Okay, bye-bye.
Oh my god.